All right, coaches, let's make a start. Firstly, thanks to everyone that's jumped on. Hopefully a few more keep popping through. But massive thanks to obviously Mason and Kyle for putting their presentations together and for their time that's gone into that. And it'll be a great resource, not just for those that are tuned in tonight, but coaches that sign up and coach in the future. And they'll be there on the website and on the Wyndham Basketball YouTube for them to refer back to. And knowing both Kyle and Mason, I know they've put a lot of work into it because they've bugged me about it a bit. And I know they've bugged other people as well. So certainly well prepared and looking forward to it. And first up is our coaching lead and youth league women's coach and better hair than Corey Michaelides, Mason Rogers.
Thank you very much, Reece. It's an honour to be presenting and I hope that you guys get something from it. I will share my screen once I get access to it. Then we can start.
Hold up one sec.
All good.
It should be all good now.
Perfect. Screen. So, good evening, everyone. So tonight, I'm going to be presenting on the foundations of offense. Along with this presentation, after when Reece sends out the link, also he'll send out a document which details drills that you can go and use in your domestic sessions once we go back to go and implement some of these concepts. So today we're going to be focusing mostly on the concepts. The application of it will be more in the documents then afterwards. So in my opinion, the concept of offense is broken down into two main phrases: spacing before advantage and advantage before shot. Today we'll go through what those are. We'll talk about what is spacing, what is an advantage, and how these concepts go and break down the offensive game and how we can go and teach shot selection. So essentially the concept of spacing before advantage is that our offense needs to go and ensure that it's difficult to defend. Therefore, if we don't have great space, the defense is able to clog up the lanes and stop us from going and being able to score. So we need space. That's the very first concept. The second thing we need is we use the concept of advantage before shot to go and teach shot selection. Once we get space, then as a team, we work together to go and create an advantage. And therefore, regardless of whether the shot goes in or not, we know that it's a good shot. So the reason why this I've found is very effective in terms of how you go and teach offense is that it allows us to go and teach not only shot selection, but also to provide a clear mechanism for feedback to players. So instead of saying, little Johnny, that was a bad shot, we're able to go and say, did we have an advantage there before the shot? These characteristics are universal between teams. So what you'd implement at the domestic level will then be the same at the rep level, will then be the same at the senior basketball level. And it clearly shows the cause and effect of offense. So now jumping into it, spacing before advantage. So as I said, we want our offense to make it difficult for the defense to defend. So therefore, with our positioning, we want to try and stretch out the defense. So I know one New Zealand coach, I spoke to, he explained as, if you imagine that your defender and the ball, there was a rope between you and the ball, you want to go and stretch the defense as far as you can. You want to try and go and stretch them out so it's harder for them to defend. So we go and use the term higher, wider, and deeper. So if you go and look at the diagram here.
And Mace, do you want to go full screen with your PowerPoint?
No, just because I just want to jump between the video in a minute.
Okay.
That was the only.
No worries.
So if we go and look at the diagram and we imagine the numbers in black are offense and the numbers in red are defense, our 4 and our 1 are spread wide, so they're outside the seam, which is in line with the edge of the key if an imaginary line kept running. Our 2 and our 3 are wide and deep, so they're against the baseline and they're in the corners. And our 5 is also deep, so they're heels are on the baseline outside the key. So their defender, which is generally the biggest defender, they're now behind the backboard, not in the middle of the key where they can go and contest a shot. So if we go and jump across for some video, and I'll try and play this as slowly as possible. My apologies if it doesn't come through perfectly. First example, looking at my group from 2 years ago, I believe. As we go and come down, we try and get into a basic ball screen. We currently have 2 players in the key. We've got another one about to cut into the key. So we've got 4 defenders. We don't have a chance to really go and create an advantage, or we don't go and have players in positions where if the defenders help, that we now have open shots, which means the entire possession goes and gets disrupted. And we're very, very, very lucky that we go and hit a bailout shot. Now, regardless of the fact that the shot went in, that's not a good possession because we didn't have great spacing, we didn't create an advantage, and therefore it didn't go and lead. And therefore, as much as the shot went in, we don't think that if we go and have that shot every single possession, that we could win a basketball game. If we were to go and compare that to then the next clip, looking at my group from this year, as we're coming down transition, we have players running along the sidelines. Our 5 gets into that dunker spot, so where we spoke about them being heels on the baseline outside the key. Their defender is now under the backboard, so she's not able to go and be in the middle of the paint or the key to go and contest shots. And the only thing that I go and criticise here is that this player here, we'd wish she was in the corner because that would go and drop her defender down, which would create driving lanes for our ball handler on both sides. But because we have great spacing on this weak side, and now both the defenders are outside the paint, it creates a driving lane because of our positioning. That then leads to a 2-player on the ball advantage. The 2 players on the ball, therefore someone's open. The pass goes, and now we go and get a shot. And again, as much as this shot missed as opposed to the last shot, we're confident that because we had spacing and then we had an advantage, we should be able to go and win if we get those shots every single time. And that's how we go and teach our shot selection. So jumping back, as I said, offense is is positioning. So we've got to make sure as soon as we go and get the ball, we get to those positions as quickly as possible. So in terms of our floor spots, we're imagining now we've just gone and got the rebound in transition. We want our ball handler to go and get out the edge of the key, to the sideline to go and get the outlet. Our guards that aren't ball handlers go and sprint wide, as we saw in the last clip, against the sideline to stretch out the defense. Our 5 or our biggest player, we want to go and run down the middle of the floor to try and get a catch under the basket where they're going to be most effective. Some people like players to go and run straight down the middle. I personally like them to go run down to the seam and then cut in, but it's to each their own. And our last player, the one that passes the ball to our ball handler, we call them the trailer. So like a trailer in a car, we want them to go and stay behind the ball handler. So if they go and pick the ball up, they can easily go and pass it in an outlet. So again, swapping back to the video, I'm going to show an example of this. So in this situation, I'm angry at the ref, so I should have watched Corey's presentation last week. But as we go and come down in transition, we have players running down the sideline. So we've stretched the defense out, another player running down the sideline. And as you can go and see, the defenders are spread all over the court. They're not all running to the paint, which means our ball handler now can easily go and figure out who's open and throw the pass accordingly. Again, regardless of the fact that the shot doesn't go in, if we get that shot every time, we'll win basketball games, and that's the goal. And we can also say to our players, that's a good shot because we had spacing, we had an advantage, and therefore we could go and score. We could attempt to score. We wouldn't have had that advantage if, as soon as we caught the ball, everyone ran to the paint because they all want layups. We would have had no chance for an advantage. So that's why drilling our floor spots is so important. The only other concept I'll talk about with spacing is a concept called paint, kick, clear. For those who are unaware, the paint is another term for the key. In the olden days, they used to actually paint it, which is where it got its name. Well, this is also considered re-spacing. So our goal is to get the ball into the paint because therefore this should go in forced rotations. Once we pass the ball out or we kick it, then we want to go and clear outside the 3-point line to maintain our space. Now, for, if you're a coach who coaches, young domestic kids, you can make this as fun as you want. As I know a coach who they go and talk about, once you go and pass the ball out, then we imagine inside the 3-point line is lava. Something nice and fun. Little kids play the game, the floor is lava, that they can relate to and they can easily get these concepts. The reason why we want to go and clear out is because it opens up the key so that we now can try and attack again without the defense clogging up the paint. I'm sure you've all seen it. Someone goes and drives in, there's 5 defenders in the paint and 3 offensive players in the paint, and then we shoot a shot. It's a tough shot and it doesn't go in. They're not good offensive possessions, and they're not teaching our players to be smart offensive basketball players. So an example here of paint kick clear. So this is an example from Milan. I really love this clip. The ball's gone into the paint. It's being kicked out. The player then exits to the 3-point line as quickly as possible. They clear out. Now, the other concept that's great that you see here is the other players on offense go and rebalance the floor. So imagine if we split the court into 4, we want 1 perimeter player in each of the 4 sections of the 3-point line. This high player recognizes that if he stays here, because the spacing isn't good, this one defender can guard both of them at the same time. So he now moves away. The other guard moves away to keep spacing. And therefore, now that we have a 2 on the ball advantage, on the pass, we open up another shot. On this, he could have easily driven to go and create another advantage if your team can't go and shoot threes yet. So now that we've spoken about spacing, we're now going to speak about what is an advantage. As I said, this is what we use to go and teach shot selection. As a team, we need to go and create an advantage, and we'll go through what those are specifically. Then it's a good shot as long as it's within a player's skill set and fits our desired shots. All I mean by that, the first half is more relevant to domestic basketball. If you drive the ball into the paint, someone helps, and so now someone's open and we pass it out to them. If that player can't go and shoot the 3-point shot, they can't make the distance, then we probably don't want to go and shoot the ball at that point because, again, it's not going to go and be a good shot. The player needs to put more work into it to develop that shot so then he can shoot it in the future, or she. We can also go and have multiple advantages in one possession. So an example of this is, this is a bullying team I worked with. We kick the ball, the screen comes, we drive baseline. Sorry, that skipped for me. I'm not sure it skipped for you, but we've driven baseline. At this point, we have the on-ball defender and the big help defender, you can just see a leg there, have come across. We have great spacing on the weak side, so now we have a 2 on the ball advantage. As the pass goes, we now want to move the ball to the best advantage before we shoot. We also could consider that this is a 3-on-2 numerical advantage on the weak side. The ball gets swung until the open player catches it. Now, this player is an elite shooter, so again, it's within her skill set, and now they've had advantage. The ball's moved to the best advantage, which is the open player. Well, regardless whether the shot goes in or not, it's a good shot. Now, on that one, because the girl closed out so hard, we also could have driven here and created another advantage after that. Another example here, my group this year, we're in transition. Now, we have reasonable spacing, not great spacing, but it's opened up a lane for one of our bigs, Mackenzie, to go and run in and to create to go and cut towards the basket to score, which creates a 2-on-1 advantage on the weak side. It's a poor pass, but again, once we have the advantage, we want to go and find the open person. So again, so Mackenzie catches it, great baseline pass. They then go and help. So now we need to continue the advantage, and now we know that it's a good shot. So there are 5 types of advantages. The first 3 are going to be the most useful, in my opinion. However, the drill book that I'll send out will go and have, or drills for all 5 advantages for you to go and work on. So the first one that we go and speak about is an off-balance defender. If our defender is off balance due to having to go and close out hard, we want to go and attack their lead foot. So their lead foot is just the foot in front. When someone goes and closes out on the ball, generally they have one foot in front of the other, opening up either a shot or an advantage, for example, 2 on the ball or a numbers advantage. Because we want to go and create off-balance defenders, obviously we need to stretch out the defense. So if they help, they have a long way to go and run back. And also, we want to make sure that we catch the ball ready to shoot so that we can go and force hard rotations. Because catching the ball ready to shoot is so important, it also goes and means that it's important for at your sessions that you try and get up as many shots as possible, because the more shots you hit, the more chances is that you guys go and win. So an example of the balanced advantage, as we go and come down, the group gets into a basic pick and roll. Now, as we come off, our point guard recognizes that we have good spacing. Therefore, this defender here, who's guarding the wing, comes in to go and help. So now on the pass back, she closes out and her feet are parallel with the sideline. So her top foot is in front. So our wing player makes the great read to now drive because it's an off-balance defender, so we want to drive. Now she can get feet into the paint and she can perform an athletic finish. Because she's driven and now all the defensive collapsed and all 5 defenders have gone onto her, we also could have created another advantage by then passing it out for a 3-point shot. The second advantage is what we call a 2 on the ball advantage, which again is conceptually quite simple. If we have 2 players on the ball, then someone is open. Therefore, we want to pass the ball to the open player who can now shoot or try and create an advantage for someone else. So for our group, we just have the basic saying of C2, the ball's got to go, which is just an easy teaching point or phrase to go and use while you're coaching it. So again, looking at the clips so you guys can understand it. In this situation, we bring the ball down. Again, spacing's reasonable. Because we only want 2 players on each, or perimeter players on each side of the floor, Mackenzie's going to cut through. The corner player's going to cut through. However, because we have great spacing and good positioning, our ball handler can go and see space in the paint, so she drives. As she drives, now we go and have a 2-player on the ball advantage. So the shooter's defender and the ball handler's defender all collapse, which opens up the pass out for now the shot, or because now the defender has to close out hard, the next drive could occur. So we could drive the off-balance defender. The last one of the 3 that I think will be most useful for you guys is a numbers advantage. So if we have any sort of numerical advantage, so 2 offensive players versus 1 defensive player, 3 offensive players versus 2 defensive players, then it's our goal to ensure that the ball goes to the open player so they can have an open shot. Now, this can happen in transition or in quarter court settings. So for example, in this clip, as we come down in transition, at this point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 offensive players versus 2 defensive players. So our goal here is to maintain our spacing and pass the ball to the open person, which in this possession was very clear because she's 6'4". So again, that's an example in transition. It teaches your players to go and make easy reads. I'm coming down transition, who's open? That's a good shot. If, as an example, in a quarter court setting, again, we just get back into a basic pick and roll. Notice we have great spacing. So again, corner, high wing, corner. So we've stretched the defense out. Both the weak side defenders are outside the paint. As we come off the screen, at this point, we now have 2 players on the ball. The ball handler's defender and the screener's defender are both helping on the ball handler. Therefore, now we create a 2-on-1 numerical advantage with the screener and the corner shooter versus the corner shooter's defender. So now, as we roll, the corner shooter's defender goes and helps him on the big, on the roller, sorry, on the screener, and therefore we pass the open person. And because we've had that advantage, that's a good shot. That's another reason why this is a good framework I've found, is that players, because they know they're doing the right thing and that's the right shot to take, generally have more confidence in what they're doing. So we don't have players who second guess themselves. It's just, I see the advantage happen. Now I'm open. It's in my shot selection. So it's in my ability. I'm going to take this shot. So the last two, as I said, they might not be as relevant, but I still thought that it was very important to put them in. The first one is a mismatch advantage. So mismatch occurs when a defender is poor at guarding an ability which the offensive player has. For example, a size advantage, like you see in the photo. You have Yao Ming at 7'6" versus Nate Robinson at 5'9". Throw the ball to Yao and let him dunk on him. A speed advantage, a skill advantage. This advantage can not only be used to go and score, but it can also be used to go and create a second advantage, which we'll see in a couple of the clips. You might go and have a very big play. You might have a good post play. You might have a really good guard or wing. So because they're better than their opposition and they can go and either score whenever they want, they can go and create an advantage themselves very easily, or an advantage for others. So an example of this, in this first clip that we're about to see, Reece was very fortunate to allow one of his women's players to play down. I think had 40. So the defense, because they couldn't guard her one-on-one, they immediately decided to go and throw a double team at her. So as you can see, the ball goes into the big girl, they immediately double. Our spacing isn't fantastic, but we get the kick out. So we've had a 2 on the ball advantage because it's a double team. On the kick out, we've created a numerical advantage, a 2-on-1, and the ball now just continues to the best advantage, and then we go and shoot the ball. Again, that's the offense we want. Alternatively, here's a clip of a guard advantage. So again, we believe that the ball handler was better than the defender. So on this clip, we've had great spacing, we attack. That now leads to a 2 on the ball advantage. So therefore the easy pass can be thrown to the big, and then we go and score. Finally, we talk about advantage finishes, and this is the last concept we'll speak about. Again, as I said, the main thing about this is teaching shot selection. So when attacking the basket, we want to go and emphasize to our players that we want 1-on-0 finishes. So I'm wide open, no one's on me, I'm going to lay the ball up. Or 1-on-1 finish, advantage finishes. The reason why we still want to emphasize 1-on-1 finishes is that it allows our players to go and get draw fouls, which at any level is the highest percentage shot and makes up a huge percentage of the scores at a domestic level. So we want to go and teach our players when it's the correct time to shoot and when it isn't. So on a drive, the offensive player must pass if the help defender is in a position to take a charge. So the defender in that situation would have a positional advantage. So an example of this, let's get through. So as the offense comes down, they have a 1-on-1 situation. However, at this point, our defender now has a positional advantage. So if this player is going to go and shoot the ball, it's going to be a charge and a turnover. So we want that player to either make a counter move, get around the defender, or we'd want them to go kick it out to try and create another advantage. In the end, again, it leads to a charge and our ball. So again, we can go and explain to our player, not that wasn't good. You can explain, did the defender have a positional advantage? Yes. Okay, well then what would have been the correct read? And Kyle will speak more about these feedback, best practice of feedback in the next presentation. So the second concept is if the help defender is a rim protector, or again, they're good at blocking shots, and they can go and contest your shot, then we don't want to shoot it. You want to go and pass it. So again, you see it a lot of domestic levels. Someone will go and drive in, they see the big kid, they drive right up to the big kid, they shoot it, and boom, shot gets blocked. Again, not an advantage situation for us. So on this clip, the ball goes and comes to the opposition big. They go and drive. And again, at this point, they haven't really, the offensive player hasn't beaten the defender. And And again, the defender 6'4", 7'5" wingspan, going up against her while the defender has front position isn't going to result in a good shot. So again, that would be not a good shot. And again, using our basic parameters of what shot selection should be, we can go and inform that. Now we're looking at when it is good to go and shoot. So on a drive, the offensive player should shoot if the help defender is out of position and the layup can be made. So as I said before, we want to go and emphasize one-on-one finishes, because again, that's where we go and get fouls. And if the defender doesn't have a positional advantage and the layup can be made, then that'll be a good shot. So again, looking at this, I'll jump to the clip. We get a steal. As we go and come in, our guard now is able to go for a layup because the defense is not in a position to take a charge and they're not a shot blocker. So on this, our guard can step in, potentially draw a foul, but otherwise get the shot up relatively easy and go and score. So again, great finish because she had the athletic advantage in that situation. The last concept and clip is if the offensive player is more athletic than the defender and therefore they can get a shot over the contest. Again, the most basic example would be if you have a really tall athletic player and they drive in and a very tiny non-athletic player tries to go and contest them, a really athletic player is probably going to be able to finish the ball with any ease. So that's a finish that we'd allow. And again, gives them a chance to go and get fouls. So you've seen this clip before, so I'll just let it play through. In this situation, the player on the weak side being Rachel, very athletic player, very good at going and being deceptive with her steps on the lap, can jump off 1 foot. So in this situation, drives, takes off well outside what the defender would expect. In this situation, the big is athletic generally. However, because Rachel's more athletic and going to go and finish up and outside her body, she can easily get the shot off without the defender trying to go and contest. So again, that's a good shot. So in summation, spacing before advantage is the basic foundation of offense because it teaches our players the core concepts. We need to go and have great positioning to stretch the defense out. We need to then go and try and create an advantage in whatever we've spoken about together. And the ball moves to the best person, the best advantage, and they go and take the shot. And it provides really specific feedback for players at any level so they can understand, offensive concepts in a lot deeper way than we currently probably give them feedback. These concepts can run out of 5-out or 3-out twin alignments. So if you want to talk about that, let me know. But if you have any further questions, my details are there. And as I said, Reece will send out a booklet which goes and contains drills you guys can use to implement some of these concepts. But thank you very much for listening, and yeah.
Thanks, Mason. I just stopped your video partway through because your internet was a little bit shaky, mate. So need to
my apologies.
to a better plan. But
I know.
Outstanding presentation, mate. Really well broken down, and clearly a lot of thought and time that's gone into it. So thank you for that. Just quickly, there was only one question that's come through so far, so unless anything else comes through, what age group would you start teaching this? And I guess it's a interesting question because obviously we're presenting to a wide array of domestic coaches. So what's your thoughts there, or how you might tweak it for younger age groups as well?
So the way that I would handle it is, if I was coaching at an under 10s level, I'd be going and focusing primarily on just spacing. In a lot of the domestic basketball I've seen, when you get to those low levels, because people want to be in a position to score, they go and run as close. Sorry, let's start the video. Because they want to be in a position to score, everyone runs towards the basket, and then we can't go and get up any shots. So I think trying to emphasize space at under 10s level. In terms of what basic advantages are, I think you can teach it from an under 12s level. Like when you really go and break it down, we're talking about if I go and drive in and someone else's player helps on me, I should pass the open player. They're concepts that under 12s could go and learn. And I know myself and Corey's in the group, working at the Under 12 showcase, like they was the same concepts they were preaching there as well. So especially for the basic ones, 2 on the ball. If a defender closes out at me and they're running, they're not in a good stance, I should probably drive the ball, not go and shoot it over them. Broken down the concepts, I think quite simple. And so from under 12s, you could build them in and then build in maybe some of the more advanced ones by the time you get to under 16s, under 18s.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you might start with basic 2 versus 1, and then 3 versus 2. And you can definitely do that in the half court. So yeah, I think you could build in elements of that from under 8s really, particularly the 2 versus 1, and then sort of build up what an advantage is from there. So great answer, great clinic, mate. Appreciate your time.
Anytime. Good luck, Kyle.
All right. Next up is assistant to the coaching lead, Kyle Ogden.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, better kick off then. First of all, Reece, fantastic job putting all this together. It's been fantastic to watch the club that I'm lucky enough to be involved with really digging their heels in regards to putting out a lot of content during these times. Mason, great presentation. I wish I would have known that stuff when I was first starting to coach domestic basketball. I'm still learning it. It's really, really good. So look, today I'm presenting on a games approach to coaching. It's not going to be like a whole bunch of drills per se. It's more going to be talking about how you coach with a games approach. So let me just go and share my screen. Oh, didn't like that. Oh, is my audio okay, Reece? Do I sound fine? I mean, for me.
It's fine, mate.
All clear? Fantastic. Okay, so a games-based approach to coaching. What is a games-based approach to coaching? Well, as the name suggests, it uses game-like situations as a teaching tool. I'm just going to turn off my video really quickly, just in case it's not already. And look, the emphasis is on encouraging players to make decisions for themselves. They're the ones who actually have to make the decisions in a match. So that's where the emphasis lies. And the coach will manipulate those game situations to teach and practice different skills. So look, the first step to coaching in this way is to actually identify what you need your team to improve in. So stand back when you're watching the match and just observe what could my team use at the next training session to get better. So I'm going to focus in on a very important one for domestic basketball. I mean, all basketball, dribbling with your eyes up. Now, it's a games-based approach is not just throwing your players into a 5-on-5 game and calling it a day. It's part of a progression. So first you need to introduce this skill at even a walking pace. Can your players actually walk, dribble with their eyes up? And you might want to show them numbers on your hand at the other end of the court to ensure that they keep their eyes up, or there's some other techniques that you could come up with. Gradually increasing the speed so they can sprint, retreat and go backwards, dribble around cones, all with their eyes up the whole time. That's when you introduce the game-like situation. Can they perform the skill in a game-like situation? And then the measure of success and the final step is have you noticed the players dribbling with their eyes up in the game? If they are, after practicing it, then something's going right. Now, a game-like situation that I love for practicing dribbling with your eyes up is called name calling 3-on-3. It's just a normal game of 3-on-3 where the rule is you must call the name of your teammate that you're passing the ball to. And you have to do that before making the pass or before ending your dribble. So the players have to decide who they want to pass to before they end their dribble, forcing the players to not only have their eyes up while dribbling, but actually read the court as they're bouncing the ball, which is something that's very challenging for junior basketball players to do. But it's a gradual path. You have to start slowly for most, if not all, skills, and then build from there. But the goal is to build towards actually practicing these skills in a game-like situation. So why does this matter? To answer that question, we have to ask, what is the goal of training? Look, to me, the ultimate goal of training is transfer. Transfer meaning is what we're working on at training transferring over to the game. If I'm working on dribbling with the eyes up after a month or 4-5 training sessions, am I seeing this transfer into the game for all of my players? If I don't see transfer, then I need to reapproach how I'm teaching it at training. So, look, the progression is that you need to spot a skill that needs improving, introduce it slowly, gradually increase the speed until they can do it at a game-like pace. That's when you introduce it to a game-like situation, and 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-2. And then the final step and how you measure your success is, have you noticed the players either doing or at least attempting the skills that you're teaching in a game? So the next question is, how do we shape a games-based coaching style? So the way that we approach that is we modify the games that we're playing at training. And we do that to express different skills. So I've got a list of a few different ways that you can alter when I say games-based, this could be altering a 3-on-3 game. First one is location. So let's say you've got two players playing 1-on-1. The skills that are going to be expressed are very different if the game's taking place a meter away from the basket as opposed to from the opposite end of the court. So that's one way that you can alter a games based approach. The second one is restrictions. So let's say if you want to work on passing and getting open, play a game of 3-on-3, but don't allow the players to dribble. And the third one, advantage. So a numerical advantage is as simple as giving more players to one team than the other. Normally that's a 3-on-2 fast break drill. But if you want to work on handling defensive pressure, give 2 players to the offense and 3 players to the defense and teach them through that. And the other type of advantage that you can give is a positional advantage. Start 1 or more players out of position on either team. Once you blow the whistle and start the game, the other team has a momentary advantage until those 2 or 3 players run back into position. The next one is a scoring system. You can be really creative with these. This is some of the best stuff in games-based coaching. If you see something that you really want the players to do, let's say you want your players to attempt more weak-handed layups, play a game and award double points for made weak-handed layups or weak-handed shots. And if you see something that you don't want, for example, if you have players that constantly dribble the ball on the spot for no reason, either take a point away from them or turn the ball over. Obviously, explain to the players what the scoring system will be before you start the match. And the final one is time. Quite simply, if you want to make a game more challenging for the offense, give them less time to score. Now, if you want some inspiration for games-based situations or plays or drills or basically anything, check out Hoop's Playbook. It's I'm not paid by them, just to be clear, but they are a fantastic resource for all kinds of stuff if you want some ideas. So, how do we actually coach in a games-based style? Look, my answer to that is that we wear different hats. Now, what I mean by that is we coach differently depending on what the player needs in the given moment. And I'm particularly focusing on 3 main styles here. Oh, actually, I've gone one too far. There we go. So on one end of the spectrum, if you will, is the observing hat. If you want the players to figure out something for themselves, show teamwork in a game-like situation, or you're in a match and you want to see if there's transfer for what you've been working on at training. Stepping back, being quiet and observing is an approach that you can take. At the other end of the spectrum is the fixing hat. This is, you see a player doing something wrong and you tell them what they're doing wrong and you fix it for them. Now, in the middle of those 2 hats is guiding. Now, this is the hat that I'm going to be really pushing today. It's not giving the answers to the players or fixing their problems. It's guiding them to make those decisions. And I think that's really important. We must resist immediately giving the players all of the answers. So what I'm suggesting is that rather than telling players what they're doing wrong outright or fixing things for them, we deliver feedback while wearing that guiding hat. And the framework that I'm going to give is called ask, offer, ask. Now, you start off by asking the player what they've just seen or what they feel. So play stopped and you ask, what did you see out there? And it's really important that you start to generate this conversation with your players as opposed to it being a one-way street, just telling them what to do. Because we're trying to develop players that can think for themselves. So it's really important to listen to what your player says and make their opinion feel valued, because they might already know the answer. They might go, I did this, but I really should have done that. And then you don't need to coach them. They're doing it for themselves. We're creating players that can make decisions and think for themselves. So if needs be, you can offer advice. So how about this? What if you try doing that? And right after offering that advice, that's when you want to ask again, what does the athlete think of your advice? And we want the player to tell us why he should change. It's not about us necessarily dictating what the player does. I mean, obviously we want our players to play in a certain way, but it's about getting the player to think about why they should do that. And the key to this technique is your ability to ask open questions. So we're avoiding questions that can be answered with a yes or a no. And the other trap that you could fall into is you don't want to ask quizzing questions. Now, what I mean by that is me personally as a coach, when I want my defenders to call ball when their player gets the ball. So a quizzing question would be, what do we say when our player gets the ball? And all of the players recite ball. And they're not thinking about it. They're just reciting an answer that they know the coach wants to hear. So an open question that you could ask your team or a player is, why do we call ball when our player gets the ball? Now they're thinking about the benefits of doing something, and it's going to help them think for themselves out on the court. We are guiding players to make the decision for themselves. Now, one of my favorite game-like situations to teach out of is called 3-on-2 around the key. Now, I've got a little animation going. The blue player who starts with the ball here is the coach. And I can't animate a coach in this particular app, but there's 3 blue players around the keyway and 2 red players inside the keyway. The way the drill starts is the coach passes the ball to either of the 3 players, and a 3-on-2 game starts. So there's a numerical advantage for the offense. And you just play until the offense scores or the defense has the ball. I love this drill. So here's an example dialogue for this ask, offer, ask technique. So a lot of the time when you have younger players, they will get the ball, but they won't turn around because they're either scared of the defense or they just don't know to. So they can't see their teammates and they can't see the basket. So they're not a threat with the ball. So rather than the coach going in and saying, Jimmy, turn around when you have the ball, he steps in and asks how that play felt. And the player responds unsure of what to do, so the coach decides to offer advice. Perhaps you could pivot around. Now, the player gives a pretty, unsure answer. So the coach is now following up with a question, an open-ended question that gets the player to talk about why they might do something differently. And that generates the understanding and helps your advice stick. It might take a little bit longer, but it's much better than constantly reminding your players to pivot around when you have the ball, end after end after end. So an overview of the hats is that players make the decisions in the game. So we need to empower players to make decisions at training. And to do that, we can't give the players all of the answers. There's definitely going to be times where you have to step in and fix something immediately. I'm going to dare say, if your player is yelling at a referee, it's probably time to fix that problem in the immediate moment. Or observing is also important too. You need to know when to stand back and let the players solve the problems. I've been beating on about this, but don't jump to fixing immediately all of the time. And a little bonus message that I want to pass on, because it's very important to me, I think. It's we want our teams to focus on the process, not the result. So our results focus is things that are outside of our control. Points scored, wins and losses, how good our opponents are, how experienced the referees are on the given Saturday when we're coaching. We want our players to focus on the things that they can fully control, how much effort they put in on the court, their attitude to each other. It's not the points scored, but how we got there. So Mason expresses this process focus when he talks about his spacing before advantage, advantage before shot. He's not focusing on whether the basket went in. There's a process that will lead to success, and that's what they're focused on. Now, if you've got players that are results focused and things go bad, well, we've all been there. Players can lose control of their emotions and they become very difficult to coach. And yes, that is a picture of me that my mum found me last night. So look, the key is that we need to focus on what we can control. That's attitude, not only attitude to our teammates, but to ourselves. If we miss a shot as a player and you followed the process that your coach wanted you to follow, then getting down on yourself is a poor attitude, and it's something that you can learn to control. Teamwork, working together with a shared plan, something that you can control, whether you're winning by 50 or losing by 50, and having fun. Sometimes, I umpire a lot of domestic basketball. I coach a lot of domestic basketball, and it gets on my nerves when I see people they don't look like they're having fun. That should be something that all teams think about and control. These are measures of success that you can give to your team, but have a discussion with your team. Figure out what they can control and what they want their measures of success to be. You'll create a resilient team, but it's going to give your team the best chance to reach their full potential. So, in summary, work towards practicing skills in a game-like situation. Empower your players to think for themselves at training. Wear the hat your player needs in the moment. And focus on the process and let the results take care of themselves. Thank you very much, everyone. I've attached my email. I would be stoked to have more coaching conversations with people like you. It would be an honor. I would love to. And again, thank you, Reece, for putting this together. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Kyle. Fantastic work, mate. We've got a couple of questions, so I'll throw to the coaches directly to ask. First up, Glennie Goodfellow.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. Glenn, how you doing?
All right. Well done, Kyle. Very good. The question I would pose, what would your approach be to, say, players that are too scared to answer your question for fear of looking silly in front of their teammates and you as a coach because they're not getting it. How would you, as a coach, deal with that?
It's definitely a challenge. We do have introverted players on our team, for sure. Look, it's got to be something that you push every day. It's not an overnight change when it comes to having these kind of conversations between players. If you've got a particularly introverted player, you might need to, before you talk to them in front of the team, pull them aside while the drill's going on and just talk to them. And like a focus on developing young kids' social skills, their ability to have a group conversation and really making it a part of your training session, and trying to break away from the school teacher student mentality. I remember sitting in math class and doing whatever I could to avoid having to answer a math question. So you really want to avoid that kind of environment. I feel like that can come from a lot of the time those quizzing questions. If a player doesn't know an answer to a question and you quiz them on it, that's where a feeling of embarrassment can come from. So it's just making it a nurturing environment where these conversations between players is a normality. It's a challenge though, and I'm constantly learning myself too. And it depends on player to player. It's just think on the fly, and if just do your absolute best is the best advice that I can give.
Yeah, great answer, great question. I've got two more. There's one other that's come in. I'll ask it first. You spoke about trying to be process focused. What about, have you got any advice for coaches who might have parents of players that are really results focused and overbearing, and it's, we've got to win and we've got to do this? What's sort of your thoughts there? How do you handle that?
That's a tough one. It's very challenging to shift somebody's mindset, but I think that being upfront with what your philosophy is and why you're doing it, and having the conversation, not being afraid to sit down and talk with that parent or the player, because if they understand where it's coming from and what the benefits are for their child, and if you're very transparent with what you're doing, it really helps with those kind of things. And I find a lot of the time we can mistake that win at all costs mentality that's damaging the player. It might just be emotional immaturity. So again, making the focus upon attitude and the next play, and if you need to, explaining that dwelling on the last play if it didn't go so well is really going to damage your ability to take on the next play. And look, if all else fails, the bench is a great teacher. There's no need to yell at a kid if they're showing a bad attitude. That's definitely not what I would suggest. But if you start to see behavior that you, the child, and the parent have agreed on to be undesirable, sub them out of the game, have a quiet conversation to them, and then give them the opportunity to go back out there and fix it for themselves. It's again, ongoing process, but be transparent, be honest, and it varies from parent to parent for sure, and player to player.
Yeah, no, it's an ongoing challenge. And then the other part is, Kyle, and you would know this, just because you focus on development doesn't mean you don't care about winning.
You need players to win, right? We need to develop the players to win.
So it's trying to flip the mindset of those people. Well, if they all get better and we, improve, well, that's going to increase our chances, as opposed to focusing on that, which is often going to just put pressure and cause anxiety and all these other things. So yeah, it's an ongoing battle for sure. Next up, Mason Rogers.
Great presentation, mate.
Thank you.
Looking at it from the time frame that generally occurs with domestic basketball, where you might go and have a half an hour training a week, the feedback process you're suggesting is a lot more onerous in terms of time compared to something quick to say that wasn't right or change this. is there benefit to explaining or giving the feedback the way you're suggesting that still keeps in mind the time frame that domestic coaches work with?
Well, it's a bang for your buck. You really, if you just fix the problem for the player, if you see something wrong and you yell out to fix it, and you're constantly in that repetitive loop, then over time you're going to take up more of your time and more of your voice yelling at that player to do something that you want them to do, taking that extra moment at training to develop their thought process behind why they might change. It's going to stick, and it's a more effective way of developing players who can think for themselves. Look, that's the most part. It's really quality, even though it takes a little bit longer, as opposed to having to repeat yourself the whole time. If I can pass one message on that I saw that was really, really important, and it relates to this, is coaching's not about fixing the next 30 seconds in a match. It's about developing players who can think for themselves, but not only that, develop players who can self-review. You might not even need to lead them through these questions and the advice. You want to give them a little simple framework of what did I do, what were my options, and what would I do differently next time? And you can have these players start to go through this process, not only to you, but in their head as the game's playing live. That's a player who thinks for themselves.
So basically what you're saying is it might spend a little bit extra time in the moment, but over the long term, you're going to see improvement occur quicker. So in the long term, you're actually saving time. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be less frustrating in the long run if you just spend that little bit more time to guide the player to make that decision for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Again, fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it.
You too, mate.
That's it in terms of questions. Thanks again, both Kyle and Mason. I mean, like I said, I know the work that went into it, and it was extensive, and you could see that really quality presentations and well thought out and well presented. And I'll bump out the link to everyone later today, along with the notes that Mason wanted to send, and I'll put Mason and Kyle your emails if you're okay with that. I know you probably are because you've already shared them.
Absolutely.
What questions?
Please
follow up. But yeah, thank you so much. It was great, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. We've got the last one next Monday. Hopefully we can get a few on there, and then we're back on the court. Woo!
Stoked.
Thanks so much, everyone.